that you may consider that option of deactivating it. That way it doesn't have to appear in the college catalog. We're not really offering it anywhere. It saves, well, we're not doing paper much longer, but it saves Donna Landis that struggle. That's about it. Because I'll tell you what the AP 4020. Oh, if you have any questions about the pre-launch deadline and details, talk to your curriculum rep. They can give you the details, or you can email me if you have questions about a course that you're trying to squeeze in by that deadline. You may consider that option of deactivating. Oh my God. What a great voice. Jim, I gotta start selling products. Not enough money in this.
Mark, I believe there may be a question here.
Yeah, it's really not what you did cover, what you didn't, and maybe you can give us some information. Julie and I have talked about this a little bit. Since we have one of the 15 approved pilot programs, the requirements for upper division general ed requirements that exist in most of these programs. Has the statewide academic senate been doing much in that area? Can you tell us what the status is?
Can I hold that till my president's report, because that's part of my president's report?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, you're gonna hear something.
Okay.
The start of something. Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
That's it for the curriculum report?
Yeah, that's it for that.
Okay. Academic Senate Treasurer's Report? No report. Thank you. And the Cypress College Foundation Report?
I'm passing around my report, same as last meeting. Americana Awards are this Saturday. We did meet our goal of 560. At this point, 572 tickets have been sold, so we're very excited about that. I do have some, that doesn't mean we're not still selling. I have invitations for you. We also have raffle tickets for the ATV that is being raffled off. Only 200 tickets are going to be sold, so if you want to get one of those, let me know. And we're honoring Orange County Sheriff Sandra Hutchins as Woman of the Year. And that's it. Thank you.
Do we know which faculty were selected on that randomized drawing?
I know Kelly Carter got one.
Okay.
And that's it. That's as far as I know.
Oh, okay. So we know 2 people who are going for free. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. I was told that there's no report from Basic Skills.
That's correct.
Okay. Student Learning Outcomes Assessment. Do we have a report?
I'm over here.
Okay.
A little presentation for you guys. And I hope it works. And then I push it again.
When you're done, yeah. It's okay, no, we're done. We hold on to that, please.
Okay, so we're having our first, semester. SLO training tomorrow, and I've gotten a really great response from faculty, and I'm excited to see what happens tomorrow. It's kind of uncharted territory for me. So we'll have a little presentation. It's a little advertisement for our workshops on our campus. So here we go.
That was around 1960 somewhere. Oh no.
Good luck.
I don't think we remember what he said.
Yeah.
Oh, it probably is appropriately placed. It's all.
Anyway, so hopefully we get more faculty to join. We'll have more throughout the semester. I've gotten, oops, I don't want to do that because that's what happened earlier. I'm trying to see what's the best times for people. I've gotten a lot of responses, so I'm kind of organizing a calendar based on that. So I don't have workshops when no one can come. So anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Program review, do you have a report for us?
In program review, Sarah's going to come to our next meeting. We are curious what a perfect report would look like, what perfect SLO would look like, how it would link to the PLOs. And there is concern that we're going to go ahead with this process again without knowing what the accrediting body is asking of us. So we are also looking at what are we going to require for program review, and we're talking about extending, going from 3 years to 4 or 5 or 6 years, and maybe requiring an interim 2-year update that would be 1 page like the CTE program, and that would meet both of those objectives for the CTE people so they didn't have to duplicate their reports. So we have a lot that we're considering, and we're looking at the SLO progress proposals that are going on as they would relate to our obligation to meeting program review for accreditation. That makes sense. So that's where we're at. That's it.
Thank you very much. District Council on Budget and Facilities. Well, let's see. Technically, we haven't met, but most of the information that is normally shared there was shared in BCC on Monday, and here is like the news. Last year, we attempted to grow 5%. Do you remember hearing that? We made 4.88%. That will end up being funded to our district. So there is a baseline allocation increase because we met that 5% target that other schools did not meet. So we are going to see some increase in funding, and that will have a direct relation to what staff development is asking for in terms of clerical support and an increase in your budget, as well as SLOs. So there will be more on that in the coming months, because right now we're pretty excited that we could see that. But at the same time, Fred Williams cautions us it may not be sustainable. So although it's time to rejoice, there's going to be a flood of funds. The funds might get turned off in the future. So that's all I'm going to say about that. I'll leave the rest of the items until Board of Trustees, and Brian was at the board where he heard Fred talk about it more. So I'm going to move on to President's Report, and where is Mike? Because he's my first item to report, and that's our progress from academic computing. So, Mike, what you got for us?
Finally, wireless. So I'll get started with my gateway changes first. We have my gateway steering this week, so there's a little bit of a variation to what I put here, but some of the changes that are going to happen that you should know about. New version of my gateway is going to be here. It'll be due within the next 12 months. The current version of my gateway is going end of life into support in June of next year. So the district's been working on a new version, looking for new versions, looking at other schools. So that'll change. It'll be web friendly, mobile device friendly, device agnostic, so it'll look a whole lot better. It looks completely different, but all of the functions and features, if they go with Luminous, if they stay with the Luminous platform, will be the same as what you see now. It's just laid out a lot nicer. They are looking at other options. One of them was Looking Glass that University of New Mexico was using. Does integrate with Banner, but they want to make sure that it fully integrates. The idea being that I say we as if I'm working for the district still, never want to take any functionality away, but add more functionality to it. So that's really where they're going, and that's what they're looking for. So what I'm told is that a new version will be up and ready to go. They're hoping for sometime December of this year, and that way they'll give plenty of time for people to look at it and they can train on it and the whole bit. So moving into training of My Gateway in the current version that we have, in staff development, we've talked about some training links and some ways to train new faculty, adjunct faculty and whatnot. There's a lot of links and there's a lot of information that's been there. It just hasn't been in my gateway. And so in talking to the district, in your employee tab and your faculty tab, towards the bottom where you'll see links, there's some training materials, there's some training videos specifically for faculty and for some other things, but you'll see those in there so we can point new employees to those training links. So hopefully those will help. District's going to keep on working on other ones, and we'll just see what they come up with. The second item is master directory updating. Master directory updating, meaning that you're in your, I guess it's your personal contact tab that's sort of in the middle of the page. You're updating your personal information there. There was a problem with that. It's been taken care of in the last 3 months, 4 months, so that when you change your email address, when you change your phone number, when you change anything in there, it dynamically and automatically changes it in Banner. We found that there was an issue with it syncing, the two syncing together. So now it's live, it's valid. So for staff, students, faculty, make those changes, update your personal information. It's real time. It's real time set in Banner, and that's where all of this information for, say, regroup. We got messages and phone calls today for the drill. That's where all that information is pulled from. By the same token, all that information that's in there is pulled down from Banner for Active Directory, which is what we're using for Office 365 and your access on the campus for your logins and your authentication. So we really need to keep that right. Now the flip side to that is, new employee comes into the district, you go to the district office and you sign all your paperwork, you sign your life away, you're now an employee of a campus. So that person really doesn't have an email address that's associated with a campus. So we brought this up, and the phone number that's assigned to you on the campus is also non-existent because HR doesn't do that. So what's going to happen, it'll be a twofold things. So district brings you into the district, you're all signed up over there, you're an employee now, the person comes to campus, we assign an email address, a phone number, an office space, that type of a thing. So what will happen is the academic computing departments on the campuses will fill in the rest of that information as we provide it to each new employee. And that information, again, will go back to Banner and be updated in that database. So everything's in sync again. You'll notice right now when you look at some people within Office 365, you're sending them an email or something, the phone number may be a little bit wrong. And sometimes the job titles are a little skewed. Those will all be taken care of, and then everything, again, will sync up and be right. So, working on that. Let me make sure. Oh, last item for my gateway. We were told that the schedule updates are done, so the latest term or the summer term is now loaded within my gateway. I don't know if that helps you or hurts you or whatever, but it's there. So, that was something new that came up. And I think that's it for my gateway. Now to the other pressing item. Wireless. Wireless on campus, planning and budget, this last go-around had given academic computing the okay to proceed with phase 1 of upgrading the campus wireless network. We've been working on this for a while because of the technology surveys that come out every year that the district sends out, which, by the way, they're going to send out next month, that has questions about wireless and access and things like that. At any rate, we took the first step, we retooled, we bought new devices. The devices you see in here, we have 2 in here now. We didn't have any before, so access was limited. These devices here and the one that's above Lena and Peggy, or a little bit in front of you, up above you. We added 118 devices, brand new devices across the campus. That means that every building, every floor, is now covered. The library, which was the heavy hitter before, and the humanities building has always been a little rivalry there. Who's attracting more students? Humanities is still on top, at least at the beginning of the day. So we've added, it's about 9,500 connections. The old equipment that we had up, that were in your buildings and whatnot, we've replaced all that equipment. So these devices here will now handle 50 connections per device. And doing the math, we come up with about 9,500 connections. Remember, this is step one, or phase one. We're also adding to the outside, or the exterior spaces, but interior to the campus. So the gateway, the pond, those areas will have more wireless access, and we'll be working that here in the next couple of months. We've already got the wiring in, we've already taken care of a lot of that. The last part of this, we wired up we ran a new fiber connection out to the softball field, baseball field, and it will cover soccer. And it was interesting that we found right away that the neighborhood is now jumping on a campus wireless network. So they're filling it up pretty quick.
That's not helping.
So what we're going to do there is, and we've tossed this back and forth for a while, what we think we're going to do is go ahead and add authentication. We're going to turn on the authentication policy for the campus. So meaning that every staff and every student, member of the campus community here will be able to log in just like you would to My Gateway. You'll only have to log in once a year. That's the way we're going to set it up. You only have to do it once a year. And then all the connections by fall semester will be wiped clean, and you'll have to do it all over again. We figured this is the best way to do it based on what we found out there, because the folks in journalism want to record the games, the softball games, the baseball games and whatnot, and it would just be a hindrance to do that. So we essentially have 3 networks within the wireless network. We have the Everybody Network, which is a public network now. We have a staff-only network, which is something that's completely set aside for, and you'll see it come up when you're looking at your wireless connection. That's something completely separate from what we're doing here, and we don't enable that for anybody else, but it just makes basically a maintenance setting for us. And then the one that we added this time around was for classrooms. So in some of the classrooms, we'll see that there's a number of classrooms around that have computers in them, or they're using, like in fine arts, they're using a laptops and the Macs. And it was really, really hard for those classes to function and competing for network space. So we segregated the network and we set them up so they'll have constant access. And so the boys are going through campus and setting up the wherever else we need to do that. But the stations that are in your classrooms, those of you that have smart classrooms, you're hardwired to the wall, so we don't have an issue there. All right, so again, we're about 95% complete with that. We're just waiting on finishing out the exterior. We don't really have any plans to go beyond the circle, although you can get signal out there. Every building now has wireless. Humanities has more, the LRC has more, and they're still maxing it out a couple of times a day. And that's it. The one-time funding request is going in for phase 2, and we don't see that we're going to have any problems with that. And phase 2 is basically just adding more of these devices, more of these access points across the campus, and adding to capacity. So the feeling is that every student in every classroom will have a connection. So we kind of had to decide on the money spent. Do we just leave it wide open? Do we limit the number of connections? A week ago when I looked at the reporting, it runs about 59 to 65% iPhone as far as connections made. As far as the number of Android is right behind with about 35%. And as far as the sites that are hit most often, Facebook is at the top of the list, generally always. So that's where we are.
See, that's not just us doing it.
But you can tell
Kathleen?
you know what you're looking
One of the
at.
things that came up in program review was CTE programs say they're competing with other programs that have greater internet online presence at other schools, private industry. And they want their programs to come up on search engines, like if you're looking for a particular program, that it would come up. Is there a person that we could refer them to for that? Like if you wanted a program to get higher visibility off our website?
Yeah, that's kind of a tricky thing, but it can be done. Send me an email and I'll ask George about that.
Okay.
I can tell you that every semester, at the beginning, we start analytics about 3 weeks before the semester starts. Well, actually, don't say that. 3 weeks before registration starts, 2 or 3 weeks before registration starts, we start collecting analytics on the hit counts on the website. where these students are going and whatnot. It's generally counseling, schedule, A&R. Nursing is hit real hard every semester. And I share that with the deans, so I share that throughout the registration period up until about 2 weeks into the semester when activity kind of starts dropping off. And we saw the same sort of trend when classes started and students getting on the wireless network, where humanities was hammered, just getting hammered. And some of the other buildings were the same way, where we saw activity way up here until about the noon hour when it really just dropped off. And the only thing we were guessing was just students fighting for classes and checking schedules and that type of
Let me
thing.
give you a better example. For example, HIT, our Health Information Technology program, was saying that they're competing with other colleges, with other programs at private schools. So when a student puts into a search engine like Google, the Health Information Technology, that their program would come up in that search. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
The additional devices, were they put in common areas like hallways and classrooms?
Yes.
How about offices?
Mostly hallways. There was and mostly hallways. But let me preface that. Hallways outside of classrooms, kind of in between classrooms, so that we could capture those students where the students are actually in class and doing their whatever assignments and Facebook and whatever else they're doing. So yes.
What about offices?
Offices, no, we're just relying on those. What we do is when we set up a network like this, we run heat maps. So we're able to find out where the signal level is in here, and it shows us in graphs and whatnot. And so we kind of have an idea, a really good idea, where to place these devices and heat up these large areas. Sort of looks like a Venn diagram after a while. And so I wouldn't say specifically offices, I wouldn't say specifically classrooms, but there are some where they're very close proximity to the door of a classroom, say, just depending on where the heat map told us to put them. So we've got overlap. Phase 2 is going to give us even more overlap. So what we're doing with the phase 1 is we've installed all these devices, we're looking at those heat maps, we're watching the analytics and whatnot, seeing where where most activity is, and that's going to drive where we're adding the rest of the devices on phase 2.
I know other colleges restrict access to social media things like Snapchat and Twitter and all that. Have you guys thought about doing that to decrease traffic? Because you go in the library and I see a lot of students doing not academic stuff.
We can manage it. We can just manage it. It's just, it becomes a nightmare after a while. I remember when Fullerton first set up their network, this was years ago, it was ESPN. ESPN every day, they were just getting hammered with people looking at ESPN. So, yeah, it can be done. We could even take it down and say that per login, a student can have, or anybody can have 2 connections, or 1 connection, or we could say only iPhones have this many connections. We just need to really see how it goes and how this thing flows, and see how it adds or takes away from what our objective is here, is just instruction. So.
I know a lot of our students use Facebook groups as study groups, so it's really hard to parse out, are you on Facebook to check up on your sports team, or are you on Facebook to have a study group with other people? 'Cause I know our nursing students do that a lot.
Yeah, we've been asking for it's really the same answer. It's a standard answer for me. It's just too much to manage, and there's too many people doing so many different things and offering so many different ways in instruction and learning and whatnot. So we'd rather just do it this way and then enable the authentication key, so we kind of limit it to us.
Does every new access point allocate 50 IPs? Is that what you said?
It does. So it'll take 50 connections.
So
50
they're all 50
actual interactive connections.
Yeah.
So there's kind of a difference there. What Joel's asking me, yeah, each of these will handle 50 live connections, back and forth on the internet or whatever you're doing, but it will handle more. It'll just back up this access point. So in other words, people are on the wait list. They'll bring a screen up, but they're on the wait list. But the way we've set it up is this one's flooded right now, but that one right there, or the one down the hallway's got openings, so they'll compensate for each other, and then it'll allow other connections to nearby access points.
Mike, if you're not a registered student yet, You won't be able to authenticate on your wireless, right, when you're trying to register? Okay. So, I mean, I know there's computers hardwired that you'll be able to use, but, okay.
Mike, thank you so much for updating the Senate. If anyone has further questions, please consider emailing him so that we can move on with our agenda items. I apologize, but if you have additional questions, please email him. There are some items that we definitely need to get to. Thank you so much. At Planning and Budget Committee, they have distributed to us a 15-year construction plan for the bond. So I'll pass that around in case anyone wants to see where you are on the list. These are, the way that they are positioned are the current order that they're anticipated to be in the planning process. In the, let's see, how are these going? Planning, design, RFQs, construction, and then of course, once you get to the end, the closeout. So if you want to see where your particular building might end up on that, that came from Fred Williams' presentation to the Board of Trustees at the last meeting, not the one just last night, but, or Tuesday, but the one before. They did part two, okay. And then from Planning and Budget, there was another item. This is the one that I forgot to bring up last time. I kept looking around going, what on earth was I supposed to bring to you? Here's an issue that we have in Planning and Budget. There is a particular academic program that has submitted a special request for funding to the tune of $250,000, about $250,000, to support their program. So let me give you just a little bit of history on this. The program submitted a one-time funding request in the last funding cycle, was not prioritized and funded, and it is now coming to us as a special request for funding outside of the regular one-time funding request, because it is now necessary for them to be able to teach this program come the fall. So Planning and Budget has been given a request to create the necessary instructional medium that would be necessary for this. So the question came to Planning and Budget, how did this happen? Why is it all of a sudden that we're seeing this request outside of the one-time funding cycle? And the rationale was, well, you saw it as part of one-time funding, but you decided not to prioritize it. We didn't prioritize it because there wasn't a class attached to it. Now the class has gone through curriculum. It was part of their program review. So everyone has now, in that program, has set up a very, very good case to force the campus into funding this particular item. So the question before Senate is, what do we do with this kind of thing? So if a faculty member puts it in their program review, develops a class, the class now needs something that is necessary to be able to teach it, should it be funded automatically because it made it through the curriculum process and part of program review?
Curriculum process, look at that, have them say where they have the resources to actually do that for us?
I answered that. Shantanu brought that up, and that's part of the curriculum handbook. It's part of the division. It's part of the curriculum handbook. There's an area on the master database for that, rather in terms of the cost of it. If there's a piece of curriculum coming through, a course that's somehow going to generate the need for $250,000, it's that conversation starts with the faculty originator of that course, with their department coordinator, then discuss it with the division dean. We'll then discuss it with the CIO, Chief Instructional Officer, and that becomes a subject that they have to decide on. And I know what it is. The dean has, remember, at level 2, comments the curriculum committee has to review. So the dean has to say, this is going to cost us an arm and a leg. We don't have the funding for it. I don't want to do it. The chief instructional officer, when it goes to the board, that course can bring up to the board and our NOCCD board, we can't afford to fund, the course by itself may meet Title V requirements, the COR, but we don't have funding to support this instructional resources to serve the course. The curriculum committee looks at the COR relative to Title V. It's not in our purview to do more than provide a construct where they can discuss the financial aspects. I wish I had that kind of power. So curriculum reps and your curriculum chair to create the construct for that discussion. But the determination of whether that course can be funded or not is something that the chief instructional officer or the division dean have to divine. And it's clearly outlined in the curriculum handbook that that discussion has to take place. If people will push that button on the Cadet website and look at the curriculum handbook policy, it's there clearly outlined.
Just a point of clarification, I believe this is a program that has been using facilities off-site?
No, it's a brand new course to be offered in the fall. And they have made arrangements to use off-site facilities currently. But what they're asking for is the instructional equipment to be able to offer it here on campus. So.
Just because a course is approved doesn't mean that we have the resources to offer it. So I'm not clear as to why this is an issue for us.
Well, in the course outline of record, we have to specify that there are adequate resources. It should not make it through the entire process if there aren't adequate resources available to take care of this course.
The way that I understood that, and your response that you sent out to the committee on it was approved because there was the potential to do it. We didn't have the facilities here, but they still had facilities.
Yes.
So they could still do the thing, they just can't do it here. Now, it might be better for them to do it here, but that's why it was able to be approved, because there was nothing on it that said, we have to have this course and have $250,000. That would be something which would be kicked out based on what you had sent out.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the chief instructional officer and the dean that are empowered to evaluate the efficacy of a course relative to the instructional resources necessary to offer it. And that's part of their review process. I mean, again, I'll say to my colleague, Bob Simpson, I guess I could inquire in transparency terms. Many things I know about the budget, some I don't. I'm going to the DCC now. I really appreciate the opportunity to be in Gary Zager's place. But your curriculum chair has a lot on his plate and doesn't normally have access to that kind of information, and nor is my job title require me to evaluate and be consequentially responsible for those financial decisions. That's the chief instructional officer, that's the division dean, that's where their area of expertise is. And they have opportunity, believe me, in the curricular review process to voice that. And if that did not happen, I wonder why. That's my position on that.
Here's the question.
And not that I'm questioning their integrity, but that would be something that they have to do. Ouch.
Here's the question that's being posed to the Senate. Do we support the extension of resources for this particular program because they did everything that they were asked to do? Put it in your program review, develop the curriculum for this innovative program, and bring it to Cypress College. We will give you the resources that you need to teach this.
Course. They should write a check whoever said that.
So Jolena, I have a problem with that as curriculum chair because the logic's not there for me in this moment. I'm happy for people to feed into this. But essentially, again, in my mind, it's the division dean's responsibility, the chief instructional officer, to assess the cost of the program and to speak accordingly within the review process to the faculty and to the curriculum committee and to the board, the efficacy of this program's costs. And it's the efficacy of being this particular course's costs. If that did not happen, then at this point, how is the Senate, what is the Senate's responsibility consequentially in that context? I don't think we have the leverage or the information at this point, because that's a cost, and how will that affect other instructional programs? Where's that money going to come from? I mean, when my daughter asks me for money, I have to figure out how much I got in my savings account, how much does she have in her, well, she tells me, she doesn't really tell me what she has in her account. And I have to assess that. I don't know how to assess that. I'm not trying to be adversarial. You're asking the Senate to make a decision without knowing what the bank account will allow and how it will affect other programs.
It's actually a theoretical question more than a practical question.
Right.
Do we support our faculty bringing innovation to our campus, and will we dedicate the resources necessary? That's the essential question. And we took it through the process. It went through program review. They substantiated a need for it. They developed the curriculum. Now they'd like to teach it. Should we, as a campus, support it because they went through the process, or should we not develop a resource allocation for it because it's too
But you
expensive.
understand the process was in effect as well.
Jolene, one time you said class, another time you said program. Are we talking a class or a program?
It could end up being a program that meets Title IX requirements, that we have a certain number of athletics that are directly gender specific for gender equality. So you could say it could become part of an intercollegiate athletic program, but it's currently a course.
And that course would handle how many people?
About
For $250,000.
they're anticipating 30 will enroll in the fall.
I don't like the choice you gave me of, do I support that concept of letting them be innovative and bring things forward? Yes, but there does have to be a cap to that at some point. It goes back to what Mark's saying. I want to know where the money is. If I've got billions to spend, I'll build that for $250,000. But if I've got $250,000 to spend, I might not. So, I mean, you have to of course support the innovation, but you can't just give that whole big check.
You can't see her. Oh,
Are we deliberating on something that's not on the agenda?
this is
Or are you giving a report?
This is part of the report. They're asking the Academic Senate to vote either in support of the resource allocation or not in support of the resource allocation. The Planning and Budget Committee is not, how shall we say this? They work on a consensus modality. So if the consensus of the group is to support it, it will move forward. If the consensus of the group is not to support it, they would not move forward. They try to work towards consensus. So
I know, but you're asking us to talk about something that's not on the agenda.
Well,
That should really be agendized.
you're right.
very well. I will move it.
You know, we have all these questions, and we don't really have a lot of information. So I think something has to be agendized, and we need to have information before you ask us to.
report from PBC?
Yes, yes.
Very well.
If you want us to deliberate on something, then we should have information in order to deliberate appropriately.
Where is your reason? This wasn't properly agendized. That's what
Very
we'll tell them to
Very
pick
well. That works. I will move on to the next item then, which is mentioned in the public commentary by Tina on the President's Advisory Cabinet. It was also brought up in PBC, and that is looking again at the allocation of reassigned time. That's what Tina was referring to. It was brought before PBC and PAC. There is a necessity to look at reassigned time once again. They're anticipating that a reassigned time task force would be formed in the fall, but they have asked that us as faculty members come up with essentially a proposal as to what we think reassigned time should be. Administration will come up with a proposal on what they believe reassigned time should be, and then there would be some form of a consensus as to where we fall, probably somewhere in the middle. But they would like to see some deliverables on reassigned time. So for example, what was brought before us is if you have a department coordinator who's receiving reassigned time to have department meetings, are there agendas and meeting minutes showing that they have indeed done what it is that they're supposed to do, deliverables. So that's where Tina's comments come from.
And Shantanu wanted to have a dialogue about this, open it all up, but he wanted people to bring data, which would make sense. He doesn't just want your opinion about what you think should happen, but research things, because we are in a situation where I know a lot of us would like no reassigned time, but we have significantly more reassigned time than Fullerton for jobs that we do. So it's kind of hard for us to say we want more reassigned time when Fullerton says, well, we're doing it with less reassigned time.
One of the things that he asked for is that we do a program by program comparison. So if we have a nursing program, forgive me for using nursing as the example, and the department coordinator receives 40% reassigned time as an example, the size of our nursing program.
Start laughing. They get half a unit. Half a unit.
The nursing program would go out to other nursing programs that are of similar size and quality and see what their program director gets and bring back that data. It wouldn't just be one, you would do a survey of multiples to see if ours is in alignment, almost a comparability study. So that's what they're asking for.
So one thing I'd like to point out is that we do have more CTE programs, it's my understanding, at Cypress than Fullerton. So just the nature of that alone is going to increase our release time to handle all of those things. Because this came up in program review too.
This is going to be an issue that we will have, we have to put together a subcommittee because we need to make sure, oh, fantastic. It's just an information item, but I will agendize it for next time to put together a subcommittee, and maybe we could make some pretty strong arguments for the extension of additional reassigned time. I will tell you, one of the issues that they said is right now it's distributed by department, and they'd like to see it distributed by division, and the division would have deference on how they wanted to allocate it within the division rather than have it by department. So
just one quick thing to remember. One of the things which I spoke to Shani directly about is you have to also consider the variable of how much classified support there is as well. So that's and he did not at that point have a definitive answer about that variable in the equation, and that's important. How much clerical will support a particular department, or how much clerical support exists in the division. So that has to be considered.
I will agendize this for next time so that
Fullerton
we can put together a subcommittee.
I'm just blown over to hear that we have more time than Fullerton. We've never had more of anything than Fullerton. I would just be very suspicious that they're hiding it somewhere somehow. So I would want to know exactly where their reassigned time goes.
May I address that for you, Jesse? One of the things that they have done, and this goes right along with finding a distance ed coordinator and a staff development coordinator, their distance ed coordinator is not a faculty reassigned time position. That is on a professional expert contract. So what we spend our reassigned time on, Fullerton decides to use an alternative funding mechanism for it.
They have a bigger overhead budget, and they will use that many times to do things that we do with faculty by going out and getting outside people. So I would be very suspicious. We need to look to see what they're doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the last time that the Senate dealt with the issue of reassigned time, it was a subcommittee. But part of that, and I think it's a very important part of it, is and you alluded to the need for documentation. What was happening was everybody was asked who was either on reassigned time or asking for reassigned time to detail exactly what it was they did and document the time spent on each of those areas. It makes a much stronger case. And so it actually extended over a fair period of time that we were working on it. It wasn't people just sitting around saying, well, I think I spent about 20 hours last month working on things. That's not enough to really get a sense of what's going on. So I think when the committee is put together, part of what they're doing has to involve laying out the parameters of how it's going to end up being gauged in terms of fair comparisons on it. And like I say, that did extend over a fairly lengthy period of time. And I think it was back when Steve Gold was Senate President. That's the last time I think we did it.
Shantanu mentioned the last time reassigned time was looked at was 2007 from what he could see. And at that particular point in time, I don't know how many of you remember, they only increased. There was an understanding, if you're going to look at it, you can look at it, but you can't decrease it. So nobody was decreased at that time. This time, they are not making the same statement. So.
Well, I'm curious about this accountability. I know, for instance, we've been required as contractually in our division that department coordinators have to have relegated office hours to go along with that amount of however many units they've got on reassigned time. So isn't that already documentation that you're doing that something during? I mean, you're required to be in your office working. It's not like, oh, I spent 20 hours. You're in there 20 hours.
The term that was used was deliverables.
Oh, we have all that too.
That was the issue.
I have to go along with Jesse, and I'm very curious why all of a sudden this area is being compared against Fullerton when we come short on almost everything else, and every time we do, the answer is, we're a different school. You're different.
The issue is with our extended day budget. All of the faculty reassigned time comes out of extended day budget. So we are over our extended day budget by almost $1 million, 800,000 right now. And many of those dollars could be allocated elsewhere if they weren't being spent on this. Fred Williams is very fond of saying, what you spend here, you cannot spend here. So that reallocation. As of the last information that I had, which was 2012, we had the equivalent of 21 plus full-time faculty members, what is known as full-time faculty equivalent, on reassigned time. So that's paying what you could say is 21 plus full-time faculty to do administrative tasks outside of teaching. So not 21 faculty have reassigned time, there's much more than that, but the equivalent of 21 full-time faculty positions. And Fullerton at the time had 17. So as a percent of full-time faculty versus reassigned time, it's kind of out of skew.
Well, you know, I mean, I can give you a glaring example. We have a faculty member serving as the coordinator of the math department. Fullerton has a dean of math. So, I mean, our math department is run by a worn-out, haggard person. Like, you know, I mean, except for the minutes.
Show me a photo.
Well, listen, we all take turns doing it, and we all dread it as it comes up because it's enormous. We have, how many part-timers do we have? Do you remember, like 60 or 80 that we have to hire every semester? And that, you know, and Fullerton has a dean to do that. So it's speaking to Jesse's point. I mean, they have a dean handling that, and we have a faculty member who doesn't get 100% release, just gets like 5 units to run one of the most gigantic departments on our campus.
I hope as I bring this back as an agenda item next time that I will have a more recent comparison graph. What I have right now is a 2012 comparison between the allocation of Fullerton position by position for reassigned time and Cypress, so that we would be able to compare it side by side as we go into more deliberations on that subcommittee.
Before we get too far down the road, I wanted to remind the Senate that a lot of this conversation is based on an a priori assumption that there is a finite amount of money that should be dedicated to this. If we're being asked to do more administrative duties, then faculty compensation for those duties goes up. Period. Whether it's salaries or whether it's reassigned time. If administration wants to put these duties on the backs of faculty compensation goes up. We should not begin with the idea that there's a finite amount there. We should ask for more money. And if that means more money, that means more money. We shouldn't allow ourselves to fall into this trap, which happens all the time. If Fullerton gets this, then Cypress doesn't get this. If Cypress gets this, then Fullerton doesn't get this. Too bad. You want to give us more. If we have more administrative duties, we get more assigned time, reassigned time. Period. And if that means that the budget for faculty compensation goes up, then so be it. Don't fall into this trap where here's the budget, here's the amount of pie you've got. Now how you divide it up and how you squabble over that's up to you. More pie. More duties, more pay. Period.
So I want to say one last thing, because I've been here a long time, longer than Pat, teaching Pat. Okay, so the thing is that the amount of work that you have to do in assessing and evaluating your programs as demanded by the Chancellor's office is growing in terms of accountability. And in SLOs, PLOs, ILOs, all the things that Sarah's trying to corral those cats to organize it to make it more efficient for you is part of that thing. And what the ACCJC demands in terms of accountability. And those are administrative tasks. They are time consuming. They're not a one-time task. They're now becoming cyclical. So you have to take that in consideration. Again, I agree with Jesse. If you're going to compare Fullerton, which I don't think is a really good paradigm, I agree to really assess the load and how to effectively deal with it. Then you have to look at, not only, you have to look at classified support to support some of those programs, use of PFE. And finally, what we are now being asked to do, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, it's not, it needs to be done, they're also more consequential. I mean, a lot of our decisions are more and more consequential. And still is only 1 unit of release time, and Karen can't verify that it's budget planning for 2.66 hours. It's not a 1-to-1 ratio. It's I have to put in 2.66 hours for every unit of release time per week. So, you know, I'm just saying we have more responsibilities, more consequential responsibilities to our programs. We're asked for more accountability in every single way relative to funding our programs. So, yeah, I think we're working as hard, dancing hard and as fast as we can.
Well, the issue of release time is going to come up.
I don't mind documenting it
just
either. I think that's
couple
appropriate.
of agenda items when we go
think it's
to
entirely appropriate.
SLO. So I'm going to move away from PDC impact. I'm going to let Brian tell us what happened at the Board of Trustees meeting before I move on to the next president's report.
The only thing a lot of the stuff that we've already been talking about, but there was something that really struck me that I thought was amazing, and it deals with the sustainability of the FTS that we got. The North Orange County Community College District represents 27 point something, like 1% of the unfunded FTES in the entire state. Our one district has 27% of the unfunded EFTS. If you add Riverside into that, we both account for 50% of it. And that's because it's partly why there's money. A lot of people have left money on the table. They've said, we're not growing. We're not even growing the 1% that we might want to do. And so we, partly from what Fullerton did, this massive influx of stuff, set us in that position. When they said that, I mean, they paused and everybody was like, that seems odd, how is that? But it's not just because we had so much over, it's because so many other people didn't. And with numbers like that, that's where Fred Williams was like, hold on a second, this looks nice right here and there's money, but maybe we shouldn't go for all of that because this isn't really sustainable at all.
And that leads back to our reassigned time and the clerical support. All of these pieces fit together in so many different ways. I want to get to those two items, SLO and distance ed and staff development. I need a couple of committee appointments. I sent out a call for faculty for campus diversity. I had one faculty member express an interest in continuing to serve, and I'd like to reappoint Virgil Adams to that committee if that's appropriate. Is that okay? Mm-hmm. Okay. I didn't find any takers for the district Institutional Effectiveness Coordinating Council. I'll send another call for that one. We are going,
Yeah, we are going.
but we are not appointed to that committee. We are filling in for the people who are actually supposed to be there. And both of their terms are up in May, so we need to appoint 2 faculty members to the District Institutional Effectiveness Coordinating Council. Still didn't have any takers on the District Technology Coordinating Council, so I'll send another call out for that one. The Registrar Hiring Committee moved forward with only 1 faculty representative. There was supposed to be 2, but we didn't get a second faculty member that was interested, so they moved forward with that, and it's currently being flown on the district's website. I don't think we need another one for staff development at this time. I think we're full on that one. For the Innovation Fund Ad Hoc Committee, Kathy Wada was so kind to put her name in and said that she would do that for us. So I'd like to appoint Kathy Wada to the District Innovation Fund Ad Hoc Committee, if that's appropriate. Very good. And there was one left off last time on the Comprehensive Management Review. We need to do Young Mi Han from the International Students Program. And once again, Kathy Wada agreed to do that on our behalf. So if that's appropriate, I'd like to appoint her to that Comprehensive Management Evaluation Committee. The next item on here, the Senate needs to look at faculty awards. Have you folks looked at the faculty award guidelines that I sent out to you at the beginning of the semester? Are you looking in your division for faculty who might be eligible for outstanding full-time faculty, outstanding part-time, and charger? Because that's coming up relatively quickly that your divisions will need to put forward their nominations. The next item on here is the Baccalaureate Pilot Program, which goes back to the question that Pat asked earlier. Next week on Thursday, Dr. Walker, the Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs for the California Community College Chancellor's Office, will be here on campus to, I don't know, interview us, inspect us, surprise evaluation of how she feels about us. I'm not quite sure, but she's going to be here for several hours on campus next Thursday to take a look at our proposal. We have not been given final approval. None of the programs have been given final approval. They will not receive that until March 16th. What was 15 programs is now 14 programs. Crafton Hills withdraws its approved BA program. One of the conditions of participating in the pilot is you must be in good standing with your ACC-JC accreditation, which they were back in November and they are currently no longer. Crafton Hills College is withdrawing its participation in the baccalaureate degree pilot program in light of our recent warning status with ACC-JC. We are compelled to withdraw. The president of the college says, we wholly support the baccalaureate degree pilot program and do not want to bring any controversy to the other institutions that were chosen. The reason for their warning status is something we should be concerned about because our site visit in 2017 will be right before the initial implementation of this baccalaureate pilot program in fall 2017. The Crafton Hills College accreditation recommendations involve issues relating to completion of student learning outcomes assessment.
As do almost everybody under accreditation right now.
An update to its distance education plan, which you heard Jeannie Miller tell us that we haven't had the review of our distance ed plan like we were supposed to. The policy for adoption regarding program discontinuance and improvement. One of our agenda items that keeps coming up is that update on court reporting. We have many items that could potentially get us into trouble with ACC-JC, and if we're going to put together the entire curriculum for the baccalaureate and then receive a warning in 2017 right before we're supposed to roll this out, that's an awful lot of work that would have gone for naught. So what was 15 is now 14. On March 16th, the Board of Governors will make their final recommendation. The CSUs have issues with several of the programs. We're not sure if they're going to put forward the entire 14 because of the CSUs having issues with some of what they consider duplicity of course curriculum. Not programs, but course curriculum. Though I have been assured that no USC wants mortuary science, or no CSU wants mortuary science or dental hygiene. So those two will be safe in the elimination round. Not quite sure for the rest of them though. So. One other thing that came out at PAC, faculty are being asked, please, if there is a disciplinary incident in your class, please fill out the disciplinary incident report and forward it to counseling. Apparently, there is a particular incident on campus that has been festering for over a year, but no faculty decided to address it. So this student kept getting pushed along from course to course, semester to semester, and now it's a big issue, and there's no documentation that they were a problem. Everybody knows they were a problem. Oh, yes, they were a problem in my class, and they were a problem in your class, but nobody documented it, and now it's become quite the exacerbated problem. So we are being asked as faculty, if we have a discipline problem in our class, please address it. Fill out the form, forward it to Paul DeDios. It doesn't necessarily mean that action will be taken, punitive action against the student, but it does begin to document a history. So if I have a problem with the student and you have a problem with the student, now we have this pattern of behavior that it's my problem. That's funny, right? Because if they have a student with one instructor, it might be the instructor that they point to, but if it's the same student that has a problem with two instructors, might it be the student? Yeah, and that was one of the issues that was brought up, is that when you have this pattern of behavior with a particular student having issues with multiple people, it might be a problem with the student rather than a problem with the faculty.
When you identify a personality disorder within your class, I mean, they are very, I mean, they can cause grief, but they're not necessarily what is a problem. That's what I would ask. I know.
Disruptive behavior, disobedience, and profanity does. So, that one. Could that be misrepresentation of oneself, depending on if it's MPD? Oh, okay. So. right, so, yes, ma'am.
Actually, are you done with that one?
Yes.
'Cause I want to go back to the baccalaureate.
Oh,
thing,
please.
'cause the question that I was asking Mark, we didn't actually discuss, and I'd like to, has there been anything coming?
So there's this meeting coming up next week, and I have a lot of questions, and it's coming up at 9 a.m. in the morning on Thursday, on the calendar in front of me. So that's the first time I've had somebody from the Chancellor's office available to me. I have not yet, there was no substantive discussion at the Curriculum Institute during the summer, not that it was substantive. And I'm feeling the same way you do, and I did, as I told you, email Michelle Grimes-Hillman, and I can send that to you, a copy of it, saying what's going with that. I have no protocol or criteria yet to follow, in assessing this. Is there one coming from the AFCCC? Anything, any documentation, anything that I could look at? And she said, not at this time. So, yeah, I feel the way you do. So I guess I can ask some questions that Jolene had as well. And thank you, Jolene, for notifying me of that meeting at 9 a.m. And I checked with Pat Sanchez. And then, I can send that email out again to Michelle Grimes-Hillman. But what I don't have a sense of is there a steering, which maybe we can find out, is there a subcommittee of the ACCJC, and I believe there might be, that's beginning to formulate some protocols for doing this with, for doing it, period.
They were waiting to draft anything until after the final approval came through because they didn't want to get the cart before the horse. So many of these things are waiting until March 16th. They originally had scheduled the schools to meet on the 20th and 21st, all of the participating baccalaureate pilots, to discuss where we would like to go with it.
Right, but it just strikes me that, that should be part of what they're doing before they offer their final recommendations, because if one of the requirements is that there be upper division courses, that should be part of the discussion before, when you're meeting with people, where are you on this? Do you have places that are likely to do it, et cetera? For example, in the case, I've talked to Jolena about this, simply because in my discipline, health communication is one of the big growing areas. So I think we would be in a position potentially to offer something in that case. And I was at a conference this weekend, talked to one of the leading people in our discipline, in health comm, probably the leading person in the country, about working with her in terms of dealing with this. But I think when you go into these discussions, people should be already thinking and saying what kinds of things are there, et cetera, because if you don't have anybody that can offer upper division courses, it's going to fail anyway on it. So it should be part of the process early rather than we'll wait until we've approved everything to go on and then make a decision. Oh, well, I guess you can't do it after all. It just seems to me that should be part of the early part. Because people are already looking at their own area in terms of what they would do, but it's the general ed upper division aspect that really needs to be flushed out.
And I think that's why Dr. Walker specifically asked us to make sure that the faculty responsible for curriculum processes, they asked for the faculty in the program, but also the faculty responsible for the curriculum processes to be part of this meeting on the 6th. So hopefully we'll have some more answers then.
I would just like to see some protocols and some criteria to follow to begin to actually start the evaluation discussion. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I have a meeting with the System Advisory Committee on Curriculum tomorrow, and it's an agenda item already. So I'll be at the Chancellor's office, and maybe I'll have some more information that I can provide after then. So moving on, faculty issues, unfinished business, and I asked that we would move J to the very first item, the process for setting the agenda for Senate meetings. And this was an item that was brought up at Faculty Leadership Institute last year and the year before, that Senates often, and Tanya last meeting was very keen on pointing this out, get sidetracked with certain items that might necessarily not be on the agenda. So knowing how to set the agenda so we can effectively move through our meetings is probably the key to efficient time management and getting through all of the items. And one of the suggestions was that agenda items be prioritized based on what our Senate feels are the most important of the 10+1 areas. So if we believe that policies for faculty professional development is the number one priority, then anything that would fall under that category would be heard first on our agenda. If, on the other hand, we believe that degree and certificate requirements are not necessarily as important, that would be given a lower priority on our agenda. So what is before you is a suggestion that we may want to consider on how we could adopt a new agenda so that we can be as efficient as possible. I'll let Brian speak to this since he drafted it, and then we'll weigh in on where we think we should go.
Yeah, and really quickly, because we don't need to drag this out. What I've passed out to you is very basic changes to some stuff that we had on here, and what it does is it sets time limits that we already had. The first change is a public commentary says 3 minutes per speaker. We actually already have up at the top that explains what the public commentary is about. So, you know, in the future, what we're also going to do with that is that if your public commentary is about something which is agendized, you're going to talk about it when it's agendized. You're not going to talk about it during public commentary, if that makes sense. That's what's spelled out. It's been at the top of our agenda the entire time. 3 minutes is typically the one that we, 3 minutes per speaker is what is sort of the district standard. Now, what I have down here, I have a fifth category here, which may remain 5 if it's your pleasure, but I'm actually thinking that maybe it gets folded into the president report. And Michael, I'm actually thinking about something that you did that is separate from public commentary, but is something that we would want to do when you were announcing the Tesla partnership. There are things that people have that they might want to announce to somebody, they might want to invite to do something, and we should have a place where that is. I don't know if it should be a special place for 5 or if it should be done as part of the president's report, or after the president reports they say, is there anybody else who's got any kind of announcements? It can be something which is more informal like that, but again, limiting those type of things to 2 minutes. And then you also have a time limit for the special reports, which is 5 minutes for the special reports. And this is for special reports. You are updating us. You are doing something, I think that what Sarah did was a perfect example of that, giving us an update about certain things that were taking place. It was very short, but even though there's an agenda item that we're going to get to that it deals with, we didn't deal with that in the report, we just kept it in the agenda. And that would be the same with any of the others who might have something else that they want to add. And it addresses your point, Rebecca, about, you know, we really do have to have stuff on here. If we're going to be forced to discuss it in any kind of detail, we should know about that ahead of time. And that actually leads me to the president's report, which I didn't have anything down, but after today, I might actually suggest limiting that to 10 minutes. And there is to some extent, we want to have the flexibility of have the president giving us reports about things, filling us in on information that comes from PAC, BBC, the board, and stuff like that. But there are other stuff that we've talked about today that should have been agendized as other items, as I see it. And I think, Rebecca, you kind of pointed one of those out. And that the reporting of these things should be allowed, whether we're talking about public commentary, faculty announcements, special reports, or the president reports. They should be updated information that we can get through as fast as we possibly can so we can get to the nuts and bolts of what we're actually supposed to be here to do, which is the agenda items. Because I actually think that we've done a pretty good job when we get to the agenda items of being able to stay on them. I didn't think that we were going to have a problem getting to the agenda items. That's the unfinished business and the new business. So, and then when you are agendizing those things, I don't know if we want to do something where what Jelena was talking about, because certainly when we are here and we agendize things, we can also do that process the day of, saying these things are more important and agendize them up. But I am actually looking, when you send me something, to give me a little bit more information. What exactly do you want us to do, and particularly what actions do you want us to take? Is this an item where we're going to be voting on something? Is this an information sort of thing? And there are some other examples of calls for agenda that we have that I might show you that are a little bit more detailed. But I think if we formalize that there is a stricter time constraint on this first stuff before we get to unfinished business and new business, that will help us get through this stuff. And then I may also suggest that what we do with these things on here is we simply, at some point, draft a special rule that says we're going to limit all of our debate to what's on our agenda, so we don't have to make that motion every time. That's something that's very easy to draft, but we really need to tighten up 1 through 7, or we're never going to get any of our business done. So my question is very basic. Is listing the times here okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you want faculty announcements and invitations to be a separate thing or to be folded in under President's report? Does that matter? Separate? Okay, to go right after public commentary the way it's set up here? Okay. And you want to limit the President's report to 10 minutes? Okay.
Yes.
I'm thinking 5.
5 minutes is fine with me too. That can't be any better. If you hire, do I hear 3? And then we can talk a little bit more, because I think the agendizing issue is a little bit more of in terms of following a 10.1, might be a little bit more of a detailed conversation, and we may be able to handle that when we're here just by moving things up and down the agenda.
A couple of things that I just want to give you as background information. On many Senate agendas that I've seen, the public commentary, though limited to 3 minutes per speaker, is also limited to only the first 10 minutes of the meeting. So no matter how many speakers you have, you've got from 3 to 3:10, and then we're moving on. So we may want to consider not only that it be 3 minutes per speaker, but it also be limited to the first 10 minutes, and then we're moving on to agenda items. And then when it comes to the faculty issues, unfinished business, and new business, many of the Senates have an agenda subcommittee that actually discusses the placement of the agenda items. That happens at Fullerton College with their executive committee. They make sure that they agendize the items so those that are most pressing make it to the top, no matter where they show. So.
I just want to clarify, because the way that I do that right now to try to be as fair as possible is first come, first served. So if I get something from somebody, it's that one up, then the next one, it's the next one up, because I don't want to get something, I don't like that, and I'm putting it down at the bottom. I mean, that, you know what I'm saying? So it's the fairest way to do it. But I do think that with some of this, we can probably do that. Is there something pressing? Let's move that up. We've kind of been doing that all along, so I don't know how much we need to formalize that, but I hear what you're saying.
Mark.
I wanted to ask about item 6. You mentioned that there could be a cap sort of on the public commentary. Obviously, in a day like today, not everybody took their 5 minutes, and it worked fine. At least item 6 was pretty fast. But we saw last time that was like at least half the meeting, and if you actually add up all the items, if I'm counting my letters correctly, that's 50 minutes of the meeting. And so that's 50% just on the special reports as allowed by this, and so I'm wondering if it's possible to have a cap to item 6. And maybe if we have to randomize the order to make it fair so that it's not always district council getting, booted. I just wonder, like if I'm giving a presentation, you don't want me to think that I should use 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It's say no report, please, please, please.
Right.
And if not, take 5 minutes. I just feel like it could take over the meeting sometimes, and maybe sometimes that's necessary, but we've also decided that items 7, 8, and 9 and 10 are very important to get to, and we didn't last time at all. So is there another way we can do this without being unfair to certain division reporters and
Let's
stuff?
pose the question this way. Do all of these need to have a carved out time for special reports? Fullerton only has 3 of these that receive a status of special report. The rest of them report as agenda items when they need to. So rather than carve out a time for them, they agendize what it is that they want to report on, and it only shows up when they have a report. Pat?
2 things. First, on this issue, I don't think taking them off the agenda would be a wise decision, because the person can just say, no report. And that doesn't take long at all. And so if they don't have anything that would show up on the agenda, you just skip over it. Second, in this area, people might also want to consider written reports. I started doing that with my president's report, if you recall, on them. I would send out the president's report a couple of days ahead of time. Usually I had to wait until, because of a board meeting, and then it was, if anybody has any questions about the president's report, but it would save us that time, so that's a possibility. That's that issue. The other one that you raised, though, I would be very concerned about, and that is limiting public commentary to 10 minutes. Because there may be many issues that people wish to address, or many people may wish to focus on a particular issue, and for us to say, well, the first 3 people who get here are the only 3 who can speak on that issue. We don't want to hear from the rest of you. I think that sends a very negative message to the campus as a whole. So I would be very opposed to a limitation on public commentary.
Jesse?
Going on with what Pat said, I think if we had a written reports on the special reports and we limit them to 3 minutes or less with a written report. And a written report could say no comment, no report.
Any other comments about changing the way that we agendize items? Yes, sir.
Doing the agenda based on 10+1, I'm not a big fan of that because you could effectively bury something by just introducing additional stuff every meeting that you know is gonna push your stuff ahead and leave other stuff behind. So basing it on 10+1 is another avenue to bury something you don't want to ever come to the Senate.
We have spent the allotted time on this topic.
Oh, very well. Moving on. There it is. So we'll bring that back for additional consideration next time. The next item is revision of AP 4020. You're going to be voting on this on our behalf on March 13th, so this is time sensitive.
Just say yes to it. Okay. So this is, Jennifer comes to put a lot of work into this. I facilitated her efforts. I sent out the latest, greatest. Dr. Shirley Bug has been very good about being supportive of the amendments that have been suggested. I want to say that at least on her behalf. So that's good. I don't remember where the scale is.
Mark, is this different than what you presented last time?
There's just some slight amendments, and I sent it to Joe. Where's the button for this thing? Bring down the screen, I don't know.
Oh, it's inside.
What?
It's inside, yeah, right there.
Inside here? You're gonna have to show me, Sarah.
The lit
You're,
button's on.
you're my buddy.
The lit button.
Or the lit.
The square button.
It should just do its own.
If it doesn't,
It should just stop.
if it doesn't self-destruct, okay. So here it is. The only thing that I want to say to what was brought up here, which means you could vote to move this right away. The only thing that was requested was, remember Jesse? So I'm going to say to you what Candace Lynch Thompson, because it was DCCC, and I brought up your concern. And I said this to Jolena and Brian. I refer to the request to spell out the membership under 6.3.1.2 of the DCCC. However, Candace Lynch Thompson, who represents School of Continuing Ed, pointed out that it's not in the purview of the DCCC to dictate who the Academic Senate as represented to the DCCC. The Academic Senate will continue to make the traditional determinations, or not, of who to send, curriculum chairs and articulation officers. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, it's the Academic Senate appoints who goes to the DCCC. And it's not the DCCC's job to say to the Academic Senate who shall represent the Senate.
I was asking more for a general, like, most communities say you have 2 faculty, 1 administration, 1 appointed by Academic Senate, that kind of thing, not specifically titles or names. And we generally do that in all our committees. We limit it to a balance of administration, classified faculty, that kind of thing.
Okay, listen. I mean, I can bring that up.
Jesse, under 6.3.1.2 voting membership, it says 2 faculty, each from Fullerton, Cypress, and School of Continuing Ed. The selection process to be determined by the Academic Senates.
One of these representatives is the lead faculty member of the delegation determined by the Academic Senate for the purpose of efficient communication.
6.3.1.2 under voting membership.
And then it says non-voting membership, the college president from Fullerton, Cypress, and the provost of the School of Continuing Ed all serve as ex officio. Then you have a chairperson. And then you have,
Yes, that's for the district. Didn't you also have something about the college?
I think this only deals with
Oh, this only deals with
DCCC.
district, okay.
Yeah, I think.
Yes.
So let me ask, is there a motion to accept the changes to AP 4020?
I move.
Is there a second? Second. Is there anyone that is opposed to the proposed changes to AP 4020? Oh, fantastic. Do you feel like you could vote in favor of this motion?
Yes.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Any abstentions? Fantastic. We have now given Mark his,
guiding light.
yes.
SLOs, go.
All right. The next item on our agenda is increasing support for SLO outcomes. What do you have for us, Sarah?
I hope everyone reported back to their divisions and got some feedback. So I guess, I don't know if I should just make the motion or if we should discuss.
Sure, make the motion.
Okay, I would like to make a motion to support increasing outcome support on our campus to 0.8 FTE for the SLO coordinator, 0.06 FTE for the assistant SLO coordinator, and 0.04 FTE for classified support.
Okay, so we want
Second.
0.6 for, because that's different than what's on here. So 0.6 for the assistant?
Yeah, well, the last time we discussed doing it at the highest level, or funding at the
The
highest
highest
level.
is 0.4 on here. So
Okay, then, I'm sorry, then 0.4 respectively.
Okay.
So the ones that are the highest.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, I just wanted to make sure that numbers come in.
I still second it.
Very good. So the motion is to accept increasing the faculty SLO coordinator reassigned time to 0.8 from its current 0.4, so that doubles it. That would be equivalent to 32 hours a week if you're looking at the chart that's included in our United Faculty contract. For the assistant faculty SLO coordinator, a 0.4 would be equivalent to 16 hours a week. And then for classified support, 0.4 FTE. I received 2 messages from Dr. Simpson that might illuminate our discussion. This is what he has to say. I wanted to inform you that a request from the Senate to provide additional support for our SLO effort in the form of increased reassigned time and/or additional funding would not be assumed by college administration to be contingent upon reductions in other areas. To which I asked the question, where is this money coming from? And because that's important to know, right? Where's the money coming from? He says the allocation needed to support SLOs, if approved, would come out of college one-time reserves. These will be substantial in 2015-16 because of carryover funds. We have ample financial resources to address all of our advanced funding, one-time needs, and emergency funding items. In my estimation, that's Dr. Simpson, no critical need of the college would be compromised if this proposal went forward. Okay.
I just had a question. Will this allow for us to hire like more consultants or more people to help with, like, there were questions about track that raised and like how we could get, would the classified person be able to help with the entry into track that?
That primary purpose would be for the classified, yeah. And then as far as hiring more, what did you say, more?
Like, because we've had a consultant come in, can we
still have
hire
them
more if
working.
we need more?
I don't know. That's like a separate issue, I think, that we can definitely pursue. We still have an analyst working with us, and I'm not sure how many hours we have left, but I think we have several hours left, but I think that would be a separate issue.
The one thing I did want to mention, I mentioned last time when we discussed this, if this is approved and put forward by Senate, these allocations would come off the top of our carryover funds before any contemplation of one-time funding requests. So this would come off the top, not as a one-time funding request. It would be funded, and then whatever's left over would potentially be allocated to one-time funding. So if you remember from our campus opening day, the little chart that Karen Kant distributed to us, that's how it would be broken down, is it comes right off the top, and then here's the rest of the money that we have available to allocate. Christy?
So it's going to come right off the top, and having been at PBC a few times, and it's a kind of a slug out for the money, to be blunt. I'm just wondering if all the faculty really have been informed about this, because then if that's taken off the top right away, then that's money that they then don't get to, you know, kind of duke it out for later. That's already been gone. And so maybe they should, I don't know. I don't know if all faculty have been, you know, everyone's been surveyed or what.
But isn't that our notice?
That's what we're supposed to do.
This is the same issue that I brought up last time, is does faculty understand, this? And the SLO reps for each of the divisions should have gone back, hopefully, knock on simulated wood grain finish, that if the communication is effective, that they would have said, hey, by the way, yeah. Mark?
Yeah, I register your concern, but the other concern I have is that you're right, that we can question how effectively we have, in our shared governance context, evaluated this. But if we don't get these SLOs moving relative to the ACC evaluation, which I'm not sure what our timeline is for speeding this process up, I'm alarmed, that's all, if we don't get it moving. But I agree with you. How effective has been the assessment of the financial consequences in terms of where this is coming from, in terms of the timeline of when we need to make a decision and when we're going to allocate that money. But it seems to me that it's pretty timely to get this moving. You know what I mean?
I agree that it's time to get it moving, except that we still don't have any clear direction from the state or from the accrediting body. So until we get that, I feel like we're going to ask faculty to do more work and lose more credibility because we don't actually know what it is we're supposed to be doing with that. Unless somebody knows something I don't know. And I'm chairing program review, so I should know what that is.
It sounds as though you may be speaking in opposition to the motion that's on the floor.
Yes.
Is there someone who wants to speak in favor of it?
Well, I'm not in favor of SLOs in any way, shape, or form.
So noted.
That being said, they're holding these over our head like a hatchet. And they're also saying, we're not going to tell you. I've heard no one say that they've ever got any answer that you figure it out and we'll tell you whether we like it or not, is what we're getting. So we're still trying to figure it out. We're not going to figure it out with less support.
Anyone want to speak in opposition to it?
Speaking again, our division has, 8 requests for one-time funding. We didn't tell them that there's a potential that SLO release time might take some of that money that they need for their items that are being prioritized. So I feel like we need to do that.
In favor?
I understand everything you are saying, and I agree with it. But when you look at the current schools that are under accreditation, there is an amazing amount of them who are under some sort of threat because of their SLOs. And we would be one of those groups. And I also agree with you 100%. This is a completely shifting thing that is not really our making. I mean, what we had set up initially was okay. And they changed it. No, they changed it. Well, but we passed through accreditation before. It was okay. And then they changed what they wanted. They did. They have changed what they've wanted. And and I get your frustration with that. And we've got to have it. And maybe these new people can in unison ask those questions, right? If nothing else, they'll be on a letter writing campaign to have it done. And maybe we can also say in all of this that what we did was we increased, as defense of what we've done, our process is that we've increased this funding to try to do it. Because I know last time, one of the things that really helped us, supported us through the SLOs was track data. As bad as it was, we had something where it's like, it's gonna be there. There's a repository for all of this stuff that's gonna, and they were like, okay, this make it seem like it's actually real and it's gonna stick around. So I am fearful that we're going to have a San Francisco City College situation where we're not gonna be able to come through this stuff, largely because of that. And honestly, we should also tell that damn committee, that group, to get their act together. Someone should actually accreditate them. They should have to go through some kind of process because what they're doing is making us jump through hoops.
So that's someone speaking in favor. Is there someone other than Kathleen to speak in opposition? In opposition.
Yes. I remember being in the Senate several months ago, or maybe it's been last year, when I was told that I was trying to make an end run around the process. This is an end run around the budgeting process. And as Craig said, we've got a pie, and our pie is to be shared. If we do not hold our administration accountable for that pie and the needs of our esteemed colleagues, because we know she's working. We know we're all killing ourselves out here.
It's not me.
No, but I
It's
mean,
not me.
it becomes your
It's us.
presentation.
It's all of us. So.
But the thing of it is I've also been in meetings where we say our SLOs are great. And now, this year, now 2 weeks later, they're not so great. This to me seems to be what's happening, is that they tend to use this. I've been going to a lot of meetings, and basically you hear the same thing. And in the reality is they're using this as an in run around our budget process to use the funds so that when you come to the negotiations table, you have nothing. That's all I have to say.
Someone to speak in favor?
Well.
Is it in favor?
Yes.
Okay.
But I understand, Tina, where you're sitting. And this is it. I'll say it again. I don't want to be redundant, so I'll keep it under 60 seconds. TrackData is an incredibly inefficient website to navigate. We were, as Pat said, we were given some latitude to come up with some construct for the SLOs. It bears revisitation on how we do it. And it's going to take some real work on the SLO coordinator position to figure out how to efficiently input data. CTE programs and health science have been more effective because they have accrediting bodies by which they set the standards for measuring and creating tools to assess their program, and it's ongoing and frequent. The problem is those disciplines that neither had the acumen, apparently, I'm not saying all of them, but the faculty to do it effectively, and an SLO chair could create some kind of template organization where this could be inputted much more efficiently with much less labor for everybody else's part, and we can get through this ACCJC evaluation. But I'm just worried about the clock ticking in terms of getting it accomplished. And I don't have a good, and I feel deferential to you, I don't have a good sense of how really tight that time frame is and how immediate it is, this funding now. But I know it needs to be done, and she's not going to get enough release time to effectively come up with a construct that works in a shared governance ways with us, that will work efficiently, that you can input into TrackData without additional hours and support, and we're running out of time.
And we are running out of time. Is there a call to the question?
Yes, call for the question.
Is there a second to the
Second.
call? All those in favor of the call?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. One. All right, the question's been called. The motion on the floor is to accept and move forward the proposal that the reassigned time for the SLO coordinator be increased from 0.4 to 0.8, that an assistant faculty coordinator position be approved with a 0.4, and a classified support position with a 0.4. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, who are our nays? We've got Michael Clyde and Kathleen Ryland, and is that Becky's hand?
Yes.
And Becky Gomez.
Just the Hunter form.
I
Only
count
three?
3. The motion passes. The next item is the institution set standards for student success, also required by ACCJC. They are our topic of conversation today. I don't think we're in a position as a Senate to just throw darts at a number line and say this is what it should be. I would like to put together a subcommittee that can meet next week to actually take a look at these numbers and deliberate what our suggestion should be. This is time sensitive. Phil needs this report out by March 15th, so it will have to be decided at our next Senate meeting, which would be March 12th. So do I have a motion to send this to a subcommittee?
Move to create a subcommittee.
Is there a second? We have a second.
Who's second?
That would be Mr. Majarian. Now, I would like you folks to consider who should be on this particular subcommittee to help us set these institutional set standards for student achievement. I personally think it should be SLO, program review, curriculum, and as many other people as want to participate, but it needs to be done next week so that we can get it out to people. So we have a motion on the floor to establish a subcommittee. Who would like to be on that subcommittee should it be approved? Oh, good. Mark's in.
I'll do it.
And Brian's in. And Sarah's in. And Kathleen is in. So now, I would like you to entertain the amended motion that the subcommittee of Mark Majarian, Brian Saling, Sarah Jones, and Kathleen Ryland meet next week to develop for our review at the next Senate meeting the institution set standards.
Do you have any idea what that is?
Oh, okay, so you should have received 2 documents. One gives us the previous history of institution set standards that were just taken completely at I shouldn't say at random. There was data to back it. But we need to look at what those standards should be. So I'll send them out again if you don't have both of them. I'll send them out. All those in favor of creating this subcommittee to meet next week? Say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Fantastic. Look at that. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Can I just clarify one thing before we do?
Okay.
All the stuff that we don't have that's unfinished business, everything that we did today, I am going to roll over behind that unfinished business, yes? That makes sense to you? So that the thing that we were next to do will be the first thing next time under unfinished business, yes? Okay.
Except institution set standards need to be.
Right.
at
Well,
the
no, it'll be there and then we'll move it up if we need to.
Okay. All right. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, folks. Okay. Now. But not. Okay, I'll send it out.
That's it, that's as far as I know.
Oh, okay. So we know 2 people who are going for free. Awesome. Yeah. All right. I was told that there's no report from Basic Skills.
That's correct.
Okay. Student Learning Outcomes Assessment. Do we have a report?
I'm over here.
Okay.
Presentation for you guys.
And then I push it again.
When you're done, yeah. It's okay, no, we're done. We'll go on to that place now.
Okay, so we're having our first, semester. SLO training tomorrow, and I've gotten a really great response from faculty, and I'm excited to see what happens tomorrow. It's kind of uncharted territory for me. So we'll have a little presentation. It's a little advertisement for our workshops on our campus. So here we go.
That was around 1960
Oh, no.
Good luck. I don't think we remember what he says.
Yeah.
That one probably is appropriately placed.
That you may consider that option of deactivating it. That way it doesn't have to appear in the college catalog. We're not really offering it anyway. It saves, well, we're not doing paper much longer, but it saves Donna Landis that struggle. And that's about it. Because I'll tell you what the AP 4020. Oh, if you have any questions about the pre-launch deadline and details, talk to your curriculum rep. They can give you the details, or you can email me if you have questions about a course that you be trying to squeeze in by that day. You may consider that option of deactivating. Oh my God. It's embarrassing. Replay through the speakers. What a great voice. Jim, I gotta start selling products. Not enough money in this.
Mark, I believe there may be a question here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really not what you did cover, what you didn't, and maybe you can give us some information. Julie and I have talked about this a little bit. Since we have one of the 15 approved pilot programs the requirements for upper division general ed requirements that exist in most of these programs. Has the statewide academic senate been doing much in that area? Can you tell us what the status is?
Can I hold that till my president's report, because that's part of my president's report?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, you're gonna hear something.
Okay.
The start of something, yes, absolutely. Reassured.
That's it for the curriculum report?
Yeah, that's it for that?
Okay. Academic Senate Treasurer's Report? Thank you. And the Cypress College Foundation Report?
I'm passing around my report, same as last meeting. Americana Awards are this Saturday. We did meet our goal of 560. At this point, 572 tickets have been sold, so we're very excited about that. I do have some, that doesn't mean we're not still selling. I have invitations for you. We also have raffle tickets for the ATV that is being raffled off. Only 200 tickets are going to be sold, so if you want to get one of those, let me know. And we're honoring Orange County Sheriff Sandra Hutchins as Woman of the Year. And that's it. Thank you.
Do we know which faculty were selected on that randomized drawing?
I know Kelly Carter got one.
Okay.
And some
Time. Fred Williams cautions us it may not be sustainable. So although it's time to rejoice, there's going to be a flood of funds. The funds might get turned off in the future. So that's all I'm going to say about that. I'll leave the rest of the items until Board of Trustees, and Brian was at the board where he heard Fred talk about it more. So I'm going to move on to President's Report, and where is Mike? Because he's my first item to report, and that's our progress from academic computing. So, Mike, what you got for us?
Wireless. So I'll get started with my gateway changes first. We had my gateway steering this week, so there's a little bit of a variation to what I put here, but some of the changes that are going to happen that you should know about. New version of my gateway is going to be here. It'll be due within the next 12 months. The current version of my gateway is going end of life into support in June of next year. So districts are working on a new version, looking for new versions, looking at other schools. So that'll change. It'll be web friendly, mobile device friendly, device agnostic, so it'll look a whole lot better. It looks completely different, but all of the functions and features, if they go with Luminous, if they stay with the Luminous platform, will be the same as what you see now. It's just laid out a lot nicer. They are looking at other options. One of them was Looking Glass that University of New Mexico was using. It does integrate with Banner, but they want to make sure that it fully integrates. The idea being that I say we as if I'm working for the district still, never want to take any functionality away, but add more functionality to it. So that's really where they're going, and that's what they're looking for. So what I'm told is that a new version will be up and ready to go. They're hoping for sometime December of this year, and that way they'll give plenty of time for people to look at it and they can train on it and the whole bit. So moving into training of my gateway in the current version that we have, in staff development, we've talked about some training links and some ways to train new faculty, adjunct faculty and whatnot. There's a lot of links and there's a lot of information that's been there. It just hasn't been in my gateway. And so in talking to the district, in your employee tab and your faculty tab, towards the bottom where you'll see links, there's some training materials, there's some training videos specifically for faculty and for some other things, but you'll see those in there so we can point new employees to those training links. So hopefully those will help. District's going to keep on working on other ones, and we'll just see what they come up with. The second item is master directory updating. Master directory updating, meaning that you're in your, I guess it's the personal contact tab that's sort of in the middle of the page. You're updating your personal information there. There was a problem with that. It's been taken care of in the last 3 months, 4 months. so that when you change your email address, when you change your phone number, when you change anything in there, it dynamically and automatically changes it in Banner. We found that there was an issue with it syncing, the two syncing together. So now it's live, it's valid. So for staff, students, faculty, make those changes, update your personal information. It's real time. It's real time set in Banner, and that's where all of this information for, say, regroup. We got messages and phone calls today for the drill. That's where all that information is pulled from. By the same token, all that information that's in there is pulled down from Banner for Active Directory, which is what we're using for Office 365 and your access on the campus for your logins and your authentication. So we really need to keep that right. Now the flip side to that is, new employee comes into the district, you go to the district office and you sign all your paperwork, you sign your life away, you're now an employee of a campus. So that person really doesn't have an email address that's associated with a campus. So we brought this up, and the phone number that's assigned to you on the campus is also non-existent because HR doesn't do that. So what's going to happen, it'll be a twofold things. So district brings you into the district, you're all signed up over there, you're an employee now, the person comes to campus, we assign an email address.
Anyway, so hopefully we get more faculty to join. We'll have more throughout the semester. I've gotten, oops, I don't want to do that because that's what happened earlier. I'm trying to see what's the best times for people. I've gotten a lot of responses, so I'm kind of organizing a calendar based on that, so I don't have workshops when no one can come. So anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Program review, do you have a report for us? In program review, Sarah's going to come to our next meeting. We are curious what a perfect report would look like, what perfect SLO would look like, how it would link to the PLOs. And there is concern that we're going to go ahead with this process again without knowing what the accrediting body is asking of us. So we are also looking at what are we going to require for program review, and we're talking about extending, going from 3 years to 4 or 5 or 6 years, and maybe requiring an interim 2-year update that would be 1 page like the CTE program, and that would meet both of those objectives for the CTE people so they didn't have to duplicate their reports. So we have a lot that we're considering, and we're looking at the SLO progress proposals that are going on as they would relate to our obligation to meeting program review for accreditation. That makes sense. So that's where we're at. That's it.
Thank you very much. District Council on Budget and Facilities. Well, let's see. Technically, we haven't met, but most of the information that is normally shared there was shared in DCC on Monday, and here is like the news. Last year, we attempted to grow 5%. Do you remember hearing that? We made 4.88%. That will end up being funded to our district. So there is a baseline allocation increase because we met that 5% target that other schools did not meet. So we are going to see some increase in funding, and that will have a direct relation to what staff development is asking for in terms of clerical support and an increase in your budget, as well as SLOs. So there will be more on that in the coming months because right now we're pretty excited that we could see that. But at the same time,